The evening sun was going down behind the brown hills of the border district. The air was dry, filled with the smell of dust and wind. A small road ran through the quiet town, half sand, half broken stones. People here didn't talk much. Life was slow. But that evening, something changed. A woman appeared from the horizon. She walked alone, wearing a long gray dress and a shawl that covered her face. Her steps were soft but strange, like she was not used to walking on earth. A small travel bag hung from her shoulder. When she reached the old wooden gate of the district, the guard looked up. He had never seen eyes like hers, light silver, almost glowing in the sunset. "Where are you coming from?" he asked. She smiled politely. "From far," she said in a soft voice. Her words were clear, but her accent was unlike anything he had ever heard. The guard stared for a moment, then waved her through. After all, it was just another poor traveler looking for work. But as she walked away, he couldn't stop watching her. Something about her felt not right, a quiet town with secrets. The woman walked deeper into the small border district, a mix of mud houses, small shops, and dusty roads. Children ran past her, laughing, chasing a ball made of rags. She smiled at them, and for a second the ball floated in midair before dropping back down. The kids didn't notice, but an old man sitting nearby did. His eyes widened, but when he looked again, she was gone. She reached a notice board near the town square. A few job papers were stuck there. One paper said, "Cook needed, family house near the river. Simple meals, honest worker only." She touched the paper gently, as if reading it not with her eyes but with her mind. "Cooking," she whispered. "Yes, that will work." The man next door. The house near the river belonged to an old widow, Mrs. Layla. She lived alone, except for a serious man who rented the small room next to hers. His name was Rafik, once a border soldier, now quiet and alone. He didn't like visitors. He didn't like noise. He didn't like change. That evening, when the woman knocked on Mrs. Layla's door, Rafik was repairing his old radio. He heard the voice, soft, almost musical, and looked through his window. He saw her standing in the light of the setting sun, her face half covered. Mrs. Layla smiled at her. "You want to work?" "Yes, I can cook," the woman said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were filled with something, a sadness, maybe a secret. Rafik frowned. New faces always meant trouble, and this one didn't even look like she belonged here. He turned the radio knob hard, trying to ignore the strange energy he felt. Something in the air that night, the woman started her job. She cleaned the kitchen, washed dishes, and began cooking. But there was something different about her. The fire under the pot didn't burn high, but the soup boiled fast. The knives on the table seemed to move just before she touched them. And the smell of her food, it was too perfect, too sweet for the simple spices she used. Mrs. Layla didn't notice anything strange. She just smiled and said, "You are very good, my dear." But Rafik noticed. From his room, he could see the kitchen window. He saw the pot move on its own. He saw light, soft and blue, glow around her hands. He stood up slowly, his heartbeat heavy. "What is she?" he whispered. The sky responds late that night when everyone slept. Rafik sat near his window. The wind had changed, colder, sharper. He looked at the stars. For a moment, one of them blinked like a signal, then another, and then a faint humming sound filled the air. The woman in her small room opened her eyes. She looked at the sky through the window and whispered in a strange language. Her eyes glowed faintly, silver like the stars. "Not yet," she said softly. "They must not find me yet." Outside, Rafik was still awake. He didn't understand what he had just seen, but deep inside, he knew one thing. This woman was not here by accident. Something had arrived with her, something that could change everything. The next morning came slow and quiet, with the thin fog crawling over the river and the first rays of light sliding through the broken windows. Rafik had not slept much. The strange glow he saw from the kitchen window kept flashing in his mind. He told himself it was just tired eyes, just a trick of light. But deep down he knew it wasn't. Something about the new woman bothered him, like a silent riddle that refused to leave his head. He stepped outside, boots sinking into the damp soil, and saw her again, sweeping the yard with calm movements. Her face was still half covered with her shawl, her silver eyes hidden behind the morning light. but there was something graceful, almost too perfect about the way she moved. Even the air around her seemed still, as if the world itself waited for her next breath. "Morning," Rafik said slowly. She looked up, her lips forming a small, polite smile. "Good morning." Her voice was soft but clear, and when she spoke it felt like the wind stopped for a second. "You are new here," he said, pretending to sound casual. "Yes, I needed work. Mrs. Layla is kind." Rafik crossed his arms. "Kind, yes. But this isn't a place for travelers. It's quiet here. No one just arrives." Her smile faded for a second. "Sometimes quiet places are safest," she said. Her words hit him strangely. He didn't reply. He just nodded and walked away, though his mind kept circling back to what she said. Safest from what? Inside his small room, Rafik turned on the radio again. The voice of the local station cracked through the static. The unknown light was seen near the northern ridge last night. "Authorities say it may be a meteor." He froze. A meteor. He looked at the ceiling, remembering the same blue light he saw through her window. Coincidence, maybe, but maybe not. Across the thin wall, the woman was cooking breakfast. The smell filled the air, strange but pleasant. It wasn't like any food he knew. Mrs. Layla's voice echoed with laughter. "My dear, you cook like a dream. What did you put in this?" "Just some herbs," the woman said quietly. A recipe from home. Rafik could hear every word. He walked closer, curious. The sound of the frying pan was soft, too soft. He peeked through the half-open door and saw the flame beneath the pot dancing in a rhythm. Not natural, almost like it followed her heartbeat. Her hand moved above the pan and the flame obeyed. He stepped back quickly, his chest tight. What was she? Later that day, Rafik sat at the small shop near the road with a few locals drinking tea. He brought up the topic carefully. "That new woman at Mrs. Layla's. Anyone know where she came from?" The shopkeeper shrugged. "She said across the border." "Poor thing. War took her home, maybe." An old man lifted his head. "I saw her eyes," he said slowly. "Not normal. Shining like steel." Everyone laughed, but the old man didn't. He kept staring at the wall, his fingers shaking slightly. "I saw such eyes once before," he whispered. "The night the sky burned." Rafik's spine went cold. He left the shop early. That night the wind was loud again. Rafik couldn't stay inside. He took his flashlight and stepped outside, scanning the sky. Clouds rolled in thick and fast. Then he saw it. A faint blue shimmer coming from behind the woman's window again. He crept closer. Through the thin curtain he saw her standing still. Her hands lifted slightly, her eyes glowing like liquid silver. Small symbols of light floated in the air around her, changing shape and fading. It looked like a message. His breath caught in his throat. The flashlight slipped from his hand, hitting the ground with a soft thud. She turned her head instantly. Their eyes met through the window. For a long second no one moved. Then she lowered her hands and the lights vanished like smoke. She opened the door slowly. "Why are you watching me?" she asked softly. Her voice was calm but heavy with something ancient. Rafik didn't answer at first. "Because you're not what you say you are." She looked down, then back at him. "You are right," she said. "But I am not here to harm anyone." "Then what are you doing here?" She looked at the sky. "Hiding. Hiding from who?" She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the faint glow of the moon. "From the ones who are coming. And when they find me, they will not stop at me." The wind blew harder, carrying the echo of her words into the darkness. Rafik stood frozen, trying to make sense of what he had just heard. The woman turned and closed the door gently. Rafik stood there for a long time, staring at the house. For the first time in years, fear crept back into his chest. He didn't know who she was or what she was hiding from, but he knew one thing for sure. Whatever she was running from was now coming their way. The morning after the strange encounter felt heavy, as if the air itself was holding its breath. The small border town woke slowly, unaware that something extraordinary was happening inside the quiet house near the river. Rafik had not slept again. Every sound outside made him alert, the bark of a dog, the whisper of wind through dry trees. He sat by his window, staring at the woman's door, wondering if last night had been real, or a dream his mind had created from loneliness and suspicion. When the sun rose, the smell of food drifted through the thin wall again. It was sweet and rich, not like any local dish. His stomach growled, but his curiosity was louder. He stepped out, pretending to fetch water just to see her again. She was in the small yard, cutting vegetables with calm precision. The knife didn't seem to touch the cutting board. It floated slightly, guided by something unseen. Rafik blinked twice. When she noticed him watching, the knife dropped back with a soft clink. "Good morning," she said politely, her voice smooth, like nothing strange had happened. He nodded stiffly. "You cook early?" "Yes, cooking helps me forget things." "What kind of things?" She paused, her hand freezing for a moment. "Things that hurt," she said simply. Then she smiled again, as if the words were too heavy to carry any longer. Rafik wanted to ask more, but Mrs. Layla appeared from inside, clapping her hands. "Ah, my new cook. You've made breakfast again before I even wake up." She looked at Rafik. "You should try her food, son. It's magic." He gave a small smile. "Maybe some other time." But as he walked away, he heard the old widow whisper to the woman, "Strange man, always alone, always watching." "Don't mind him," the woman just nodded, but her eyes followed him for a long moment, full of something between sadness and warning. Later that day, Mrs. Layla invited 2 neighbors to taste the new cook's dishes. Everyone gathered around the small wooden table. The woman served steaming plates of stew, bread, and a strange green drink she said was refreshing. When they began eating, silence filled the room. The flavor was unlike anything they had tasted. The food was warm but light, spicy but soothing. Even the drink seemed to make their heads clearer, their eyes brighter. Rafik sat outside listening to their laughter. For months, the widow had not laughed like that. Now she sounded young again. It made him uneasy. He decided to test something. He walked quietly to the side window and whispered through the small crack in the wall, "Who are you really?" Inside, the woman froze. She could hear him. Though he had spoken so softly, no human ear could have caught it. Slowly, she looked toward the wall, her eyes glowing faintly. Then she whispered back, "Someone trying to be human." That night, a storm came. Wind howled across the borderlands, slamming doors and windows. Rafik couldn't stop thinking about her words. He took his flashlight again and went to check the backyard, pretending to fix the fence. The woman was already there, standing under the rain, face turned toward the sky. She wasn't wet. The rain seemed to bend around her like invisible glass. He stopped, frozen in the doorway. "You're not even hiding it anymore," he said. She turned, her silver eyes reflecting lightning. "It doesn't matter now," she replied softly. "They will come. They always find me. Who are they?" he demanded. But before she could answer, a strange sound filled the air, a deep humming that didn't come from the clouds or the earth. It came from above. The sky flashed blue for a moment, then went dark again. The sound faded as quickly as it came, leaving the world silent. The woman's hands trembled. "Too soon," she whispered. "They found the trace." Rafik stepped closer. "You need to tell me everything. If there's danger, people must know." She shook her head. "No, if they know, they will panic. Panic will bring them faster." He clenched his jaw. "You expect me to do nothing?" "I expect you to survive," she said quietly. "That is what your kind does best." Rafik stared at her, trying to read her face. She looked fragile now, tired, human almost, but the rain still avoided her skin, like she wasn't really part of this world. The next morning, Mrs. Layla found strange symbols drawn on the kitchen wall. They shimmered faintly like light trapped in water. The woman said it was just decoration, but Rafik knew better. That night he waited until everyone slept. Then he entered the kitchen silently. The symbols were still there, glowing weakly. He touched one. It was warm, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Suddenly an image flashed in his mind. A burning sky, ships descending, a planet covered in blue fire. He stumbled back, gasping for air. The glow faded instantly. From behind him, the woman's voice came, calm and sad. "You shouldn't have touched that." He turned around. She stood in the doorway, her eyes brighter than ever. "What was that?" he asked, trembling. She walked closer, her steps slow. "A memory," she said. "From my world." He swallowed hard. "Then your world is coming here?" She looked at him for a long time, her face unreadable. "No," she said finally. "It's already here." And with that, the lights flickered, the air turned cold, and outside the window, something in the darkness moved, watching them both. The night felt alive with whispers. The wind rushed through the narrow alleys of the border district, carrying the scent of dust, metal, and something faintly electric. Rafik sat in his dark room, the lamp flickering beside him. Every few seconds he looked toward the woman's window. It glowed softly again, not bright but steady, like the heartbeat of a star trying to hide behind thin clouds. His hand trembled slightly as he held his old radio, twisting the knob to catch the local signal. The static roared in and out, and then a faint voice broke through. Unusual atmospheric activity recorded near the southern border. Experts unsure if it's a military test. The voice cut off suddenly, replaced by silence. Then a low hum filled the radio, the same deep sound he had heard during the storm. He turned it off quickly. The silence that followed felt heavier than sound. Across the thin wall, the woman moved quietly in her room. He could hear soft footsteps, the sound of metal being placed on the table, and then a faint pulse like waves of light. Rafik stood and moved closer to his door, curiosity pulling at him stronger than fear. He opened it just a little, and what he saw made his breath stop. Inside her room, floating above the table, was a small sphere of blue light. It spun slowly, throwing gentle waves of color on the walls. The woman stood before it, her hands lifted slightly, eyes focused as if she were listening to something inside it. He took a step forward, the floor creaked, and instantly the sphere vanished. She turned sharply, her eyes catching his like knives. "Why do you keep watching me?" she asked, her tone soft but edged with something powerful. "Because you keep doing things people shouldn't be able to do," Rafik said, his voice low. "You're hiding something that can hurt us." She sighed, the anger in her face melting into sorrow. "No, I'm hiding something that can save you." He frowned. "Save us from what?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked toward the window and looked out at the dark horizon. "When they come, this place will be the first to burn. I thought I could stop it. But maybe I was wrong." He stepped closer. "Who are they?" She turned to him slowly. "My people." The words hung in the air like a shadow that refused to fade. "They think I betrayed them," she continued softly. "They think I came here to warn your kind, to help humans prepare. But I didn't come to start a war. I came to understand what makes you different." Rafik's brow furrowed. "Different how?" "You fight for reasons that make no sense," she said, almost smiling. "Love, faith, hope. Words that mean nothing where I come from. We build worlds, but we don't feel them. You destroy yours, but you love it anyway." I wanted to see why. Rafik didn't know what to say. For a moment, her voice didn't sound alien at all. It sounded human, tired, gentle, almost fragile. Outside, thunder rumbled again, though the sky was clear. The wind carried a strange rhythm, like coded pulses. The woman froze, eyes wide. "They found the signal," she whispered. "They're scanning for me." She ran to the table and opened her small travel bag. Inside were shards of silver glass glowing faintly. She pressed them together, forming a strange, triangular shape. The air shimmered as if reality itself bent around it. "What are you doing?" Rafik asked, stepping closer. "I'm erasing my trace," she said quickly. "They track energy patterns. If I hide the signal, they'll lose me for a while." The shard pulsed faster and faster until it cracked with a sharp flash. She winced, her body shaking as if the energy passed through her veins. Then everything went still. Rafik rushed to her side. "You're hurt." She shook her head. "No, just weak. My body isn't used to your gravity anymore." He caught her before she fell, his hands gripping her shoulders. For a moment their eyes met, his filled with confusion, hers glowing faintly like dying stars. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. He hesitated. "Because you look like you need it." She smiled faintly. "That's the reason I stayed here. No one from my world would have said that." Then her body went limp. Rafik carried her to the bed and covered her with his old blanket. He sat beside her, watching her breathe. For the first time, he noticed the small symbols on her neck, glowing softly under her skin. Not tattoos, something else. Suddenly, the radio crackled again. A robotic voice, sharp and cold, echoed from it. "Subject located. Border district coordinates confirmed. Prepare for retrieval." Rafik's heart pounded. He looked at the sleeping woman, then at the window where the night sky flickered faintly with blue streaks. Something was descending. He stood, grabbed his old rifle from the wall, and looked outside. The horizon was alive, thin beams of light moving silently like predators. He whispered to himself, "They're already here." And behind him, in her sleep, the woman's lips moved, whispering a single word that made his blood run cold. "Run." Lightning tore through the clouds as the first of the strange lights descended from the sky. The quiet town that had always slept in peace now trembled with a low mechanical hum. Rafik stood by the window, rifle in hand, watching blue streaks cut through the darkness like glowing knives. The radio on his table buzzed again, repeating the same words in a cold metallic tone. Subject located. Retrieval in progress. He turned to the woman lying on his bed. Her skin shimmered faintly under the light, silver symbols glowing across her neck and arms. She looked fragile, but Rafik knew she wasn't human, at least not completely. And yet something about her seemed so painfully human that he couldn't leave her behind. Wake up, he said sharply, shaking her shoulder. Her eyes opened, the glow in them dim but alive. They're close, she whispered. I can feel their signal. What do they want? Rafik asked. Me, she said softly. And anyone who tries to protect me. A sudden explosion echoed from the distance, not from a bomb, but from the sky itself. The ground shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Outside, bright flashes lit the horizon as 3 hovering crafts appeared above the river, silent but menacing. Rafik looked at her, then at his rifle. You said you came here to understand humans, he said. Well, this is how we protect our own. You can't fight them, she said, standing unsteadily. Your weapons mean nothing to them. Then we'll see what they do to a man who refuses to bow. He pushed open the door and stepped into the rain. The air was thick with electricity. The crafts hovered above the town, their blue lights sweeping over houses like eyes searching for prey. One beam passed over him and stopped. He froze. A voice, deep and metallic, spoke from the sky. Return the fugitive. She is property of the Zenith Order. Rafik clenched his jaw. She's not property, he shouted. She's alive. The beam intensified. He could feel its heat on his skin. Just then, the woman appeared beside him, her eyes blazing bright silver. She raised her hand and the beam flickered, struggling to stay stable. The craft's light dimmed for a second, then reignited stronger than before. She gasped, her strength fading. They're using a signal core, she said. It amplifies their control. Then we destroy it, Rafik said. She looked at him, almost laughing through her fear. You really think like a soldier? I was one. He pulled her behind the fence and pointed toward the largest craft hovering near the river. A glowing blue sphere pulsed at its center. That must be it, he said. If we take it out, maybe they'll lose their connection. It's not that simple, she warned. Their cores are alive, like minds linked to one another. Rafik stared at her. Then we'll give them something they can't predict. Before she could stop him, he ran toward the old radio tower behind the mill. She followed, lightning flashing above them as the crafts adjusted their formation. The tower was rusted, half-broken, but still standing tall, a skeleton of the old communication system used during the war. What are you doing? She shouted. Sending a false signal, he said. You said they track energy, right? I'll feed them the wrong coordinates. She looked at the controls, understanding what he meant. You'll need a pulse frequency higher than theirs. Then help me do it. She placed her glowing hands over the panel, merging her energy with the old machine. The lights flickered violently as sparks flew. The ground trembled again, and from the sky came a sound like thunder cracking open metal. The crafts shifted position, confused. It's working, she said weakly. The old tower vibrated as the pulse built up. Rafik gritted his teeth, holding the metal lever down. Come on, come on. Then with a deafening hum, the tower exploded with light. A massive wave of energy shot into the sky, scattering the crafts like leaves in the wind. The blue lights blinked erratically, then faded. One of the crafts spiraled out of control, crashing into the desert far beyond the river. Silence followed, heavy, unreal. Rafik turned to her, breathing hard. Did we stop them? She shook her head slowly. No, we only delayed them. They'll return stronger. He stared at her, drenched and exhausted. Then we run, she hesitated. You don't understand. Once they lose me, they'll destroy everything here to cover their failure. Rafik grabbed her arm firmly. Then you're not going anywhere alone. Her eyes softened. You would risk everything. For someone not of your kind. He nodded once. You came here looking for humanity. This is it. For the first time, she smiled. A real, fragile smile. Then maybe I found what I was looking for. A faint light appeared again in the sky, distant but moving closer. Rafik looked at her, then toward the desert where the fallen craft burned faintly. Then we end this before they bring more, he said. She nodded. There's one way, but it will cost more than you think. He looked at her, unsure if she meant his life or hers. The rain fell harder. The sky above them cracked with another bolt of lightning. The fight wasn't over yet. It had only just begun. The desert wind screamed across the borderlands as if warning the earth of what was coming. The sky, once clear, now carried faint blue scars. Trails left by the ships that had vanished after the explosion at the tower. The silence that followed felt unnatural, too heavy to trust. Rafik stood beside the broken structure, smoke still curling from twisted metal. His hands were burned, but he didn't care. He looked at the woman, the alien fugitive who had fallen into his quiet world like a storm wrapped in human skin. She sat on the ground, trembling, her silver eyes dimmer than before. The faint markings on her arms had faded to gray. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. You've marked yourself now. They'll track you through me. Rafik knelt beside her, catching his breath. They already know where we are, he said. Then let them come. Her eyes lifted to his face, searching for something, maybe doubt. She found none. You don't understand, she said softly. This was never just a chase. The Zenith Order doesn't lose. When they can't find what they want, they burn everything. Rafik stood scanning the horizon. The night glowed faintly from the crash site miles away, but the air around it shimmered, like heat waves in motion. Then he saw it, small dots of light rising from the wreckage forming a slow spiral. They weren't ships. They were drones. Hundreds of them. He tightened his grip on the rifle. We don't have time. We need to move. She tried to stand but stumbled. He caught her, steadying her by the shoulders. You're weak. My body's losing charge, she said, her voice trembling. I used too much energy masking the signal. I can't keep the shield up for long. Then tell me what to do. She hesitated. If they reach the town, everyone will die. There's only one way to stop them. The energy core from my ship. Rafik looked at her in disbelief. Your ship? Where is it? Buried, she said. 2 kilometers north near the canyon ridge. I hid it the day I arrived. I thought I could destroy it, but I couldn't. The core is too powerful. If we reach it first, I can overload it and wipe their trace, but it might destroy everything around it too. He stared at her. How big of an explosion? She met his eyes. Big enough to erase me. And maybe you. The words hung in the cold air. Rafik looked at the horizon again, the glowing swarm moving closer with every passing minute. Then we better hurry. They moved through the darkness, their shadows stretching long over the cracked sand. The town behind them slept, unaware of the danger approaching. The moonlight turned the desert silver. Every gust of wind carried the hum of engines from above, distant but growing. Halfway to the ridge, the woman stumbled again. Rafik stopped, pulling her arm over his shoulder. Keep walking, he said firmly. You don't have to do this, she whispered. You owe me nothing, he didn't answer. He just kept moving. The only sound was the crunch of sand beneath their boots and the low whine of the approaching drones. Finally, they reached the canyon, a jagged scar in the land. The woman knelt down and placed her hand on the ground. The sand began to shift, glowing faintly beneath her touch. Slowly the surface opened, revealing a metallic shell half buried beneath layers of dust and stone. It was her ship, small, round, alive with faint light. Rafik stepped back, awed and wary. You hid this here all along? I tried to forget it, she said. But some things never let go. The ship hummed softly, responding to her presence. A small panel slid open, revealing a sphere of light beating like a heart. The air vibrated with its power. That's the core, she said quietly. Once I start the sequence, it can't be stopped. You must leave before it detonates. Rafik shook his head. Not without you. She turned to him, her expression caught between sorrow and gratitude. You humans never know when to let go, she said softly. Before he could answer, the night exploded with sound. The swarm had arrived. Hundreds of glowing drones hovered above the canyon, their blue eyes blinking in perfect rhythm. The air shook with their collective hum. A voice echoed from above, metallic and cold. Return the fugitive. This is your final warning, Rafik raised his rifle. We already gave you our answer. The woman's eyes blazed. Rafik, get back. She raised her hands and a blinding wave of energy burst from her body, knocking several drones out of the sky. The ground trembled. The drones regrouped instantly, releasing streams of blue light, beams of energy slicing through rock. Rafik pulled her behind a stone ledge. "We can't hold them off forever." "I'm activating the core," she shouted. Her hands trembled as she placed them over the glowing sphere. Lines of light crawled across her arms, connecting her to the ship. The drones closed in, forming a ring around them. One beam hit the ground beside Rafik, sending sand flying. He shielded her with his body, the heat scorching his skin. The woman gasped, her voice breaking. "Once it starts, it won't stop." Rafik grabbed her wrist. "Then we finish it together." The sphere pulsed violently, growing brighter until it hurt to look at. The air vibrated, the sky twisting into colors that didn't belong to this world. She looked at him one last time. "You shouldn't have stayed," he smiled faintly. "Someone had to remind you what being human means." The light consumed them both. From miles away, the people of the border district saw the night turn white, a silent flash that lit up the entire horizon. Then came the wind, warm and endless, carrying with it the whisper of something that sounded like a heartbeat fading into the stars. The desert was silent again. The stars above the borderlands shimmered faintly, as if mourning what had been lost. Where the canyon once stood, there was now only glass, smooth, black, and still warm to the touch. The blast had erased everything within a mile, leaving behind only a circular scar that glowed under the moonlight. From the edge of the crater, a soft wind moved across the sand, carrying with it faint echoes, fragments of a voice, a heartbeat, something half alive. For hours nothing stirred. Then slowly the silence broke. A faint spark of blue light flickered near the center of the crater. The glow pulsed once, twice, and then spread. Rafik gasped for breath as air filled his lungs again. He coughed hard, dust spilling from his mouth. Every muscle in his body ached, but he was alive. The world around him shimmered faintly, still buzzing with residual energy. He sat up slowly, eyes scanning the emptiness. "Lyra?" he whispered. The name she had told him only moments before the explosion. There was no answer, only the sound of wind sliding over glass. He forced himself to stand, staggering toward the center where the light had been strongest. The rifle he once carried was gone. The ship gone. The drones gone. Only faint silver patterns glimmered across the ground like handwriting from another world.
He knelt beside them, touching one with his fingertips.
It pulsed faintly, and a voice filled his head. "You survived. You shouldn't have stayed, it was her." Faint, soft, almost like a memory breathing. "Where are you?" he asked, his throat dry. "Everywhere. And nowhere. The core broke me apart, but a piece of me remains." He clenched his fists. "You said the blast would kill us both. It was meant to. But something in you resisted it. Your mind, your will, it anchored me." He shook his head, tears mixing with sand on his face. "Then come back. You can't just vanish." "I'm not vanishing," her voice whispered. "I'm changing. The energy had to go somewhere. It chose life. Yours." Rafik looked down at his arms. Faint silver lines now glowed beneath his skin, the same markings that once shimmered on hers. "What did you do to me?" "I gave you what I couldn't keep. A part of my world, my strength, my memory. You're connected now, to both worlds." The wind grew louder, swirling around him. For a moment the air shimmered, and her form appeared faintly, transparent, delicate, like moonlight shaped into a woman. Her silver eyes looked tired but peaceful. "You saved them," he said softly. "The town, everyone." She smiled faintly. "No, you did. You believed when I couldn't." He stepped closer, trying to reach her hand, but it passed through like mist. "What happens now?" Her expression grew distant. "The Zenith Order will return. They don't stop. But you can stand where I fell. They'll come looking for what remains of me, and they'll find you instead." "I don't want your war," Rafik said. "You don't have a choice anymore," she replied. "You carry the core's pulse now. It will call to them. When they come, don't hide. Fight. But fight like a human. That's what they fear most." He looked at her, the weight of her words pressing down like the sky itself. "And you? Will I ever see you again?" She hesitated, her glow dimming. "When the stars hum like the night we met, look to the river. I'll be there, in the reflection, in the wind. I'll never really leave." Her form began to fade, scattering like dust in light. "Goodbye, Rafik." He whispered her name one last time, but the sound was lost to the desert. Hours passed. The dawn came quietly, turning the sky orange and gold. Birds returned to the silent town, unaware that the man walking out of the desert was no longer the same. His eyes, once dark, now carried a faint silver ring. His shadow flickered slightly against the sand, like energy breathing beneath his skin. When he reached the edge of the town, people came running. Survivors who had seen the night explode and thought the world had ended. Mrs. Layla gasped when she saw him. "You're alive." "We thought," he smiled faintly. "It's over. For now." Children peeked from behind doors, curious about the strange glow that seemed to follow him when he moved. No one asked where the woman was. Maybe they already knew. Maybe she had become part of the whispers that filled the air after storms. That night, Rafiq sat by the river staring at his reflection. The water shimmered under moonlight, and for a second, just a second, he saw her beside him smiling. Then the image rippled and vanished. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere, far beyond the reach of human eyes, something stirred. A fleet of silver ships turning toward Earth once more, guided by a signal faint but familiar. But this time the message they followed wasn't calling for destruction. It was a challenge. "Come if you dare." The stars pulsed faintly in answer, as if acknowledging him. Rafiq stood, his silhouette framed against the glowing horizon. The story of the alien woman who came to the border seeking a simple cooking job had become a legend, one that would spread across the winds, carried by those who believed that even in the smallest corners of the universe, humanity could change the fate of worlds. And somewhere in the quiet between stars, a voice whispered again, soft, eternal, and full of hope. "Now we fight together.